Welcome to the DeFinity Market Strategy. I'm Paul Rodriguez of ThinkTrading.com, and I'm here with Manu Choudhary, who's the CEO of DMA Link and the co-founder of DeFinity. Hi, Manu. How are you this week?
Hey, Paul. Not too bad. How are you?
Very good, thank you. So there's been some big moves in the market today. What's going on?
Yeah, no, they have, and it's quite interesting. So again, we've seen some more FUD come out of India. So India, for the 8th time this year, are looking to ban cryptocurrency, and again, it's a rhetoric I'm kind of bored with, and to be honest, I think most people are quite bored of it. And I think the first time we had the India FUD, we saw like a 20% move lower in Bitcoin and ETH. This time, yes, we've seen a bit of a move, but it's not the same order of magnitude. And I guess it's ironic that this is all, I believe, tied to their release of the digital rupee, so the central bank digital currency that the Indian government are trying to push. So it's not really that much of a coincidence, I don't think.
Yeah, now it makes sense.
Yeah. So, but again, if you look at this from 30,000 feet, you look at the Indian economy. Unfortunately, you saw them cancel the currency in 2017, and to be honest, the banks never really recovered. And if you want to grow an economy, you need to have banks that are willing to essentially lend capital. And unfortunately, India is not in that position. So I think unfortunately, this move is going to have some pretty unintended consequences. I think it's going to drive more capital out of India, not less. And I think it's a little troubling that the two largest, most populous countries in the world are pushing to ban digital assets when, quite frankly, digital assets are the future. So it's disappointing, but it's kind of to be expected, and I'm not overly surprised by this actually happening. On the more positive side, which I thought was great news, so essentially El Salvador announced that they will be releasing in early 2022 a volcano Bitcoin bond, which is cool, for a $1 billion notional value.
What's a volcano bond? Is that just the name of it?
So okay. What the Prime Minister, the President, or El Presidente, I guess, wants to do is he wants to build a Bitcoin city at the base of one of their 24 volcanoes, and in order to fund the development of this Bitcoin city, he's going to issue a Bitcoin bond. Half of the $1 billion that he's looking to raise is going to be immediately put into Bitcoin, and the details are very vague. So what I do know is looking at the rates right now, El Salvador's dollar-denominated government debt is trading at about 13.5% roughly as its coupon. The Bitcoin volcano bond is probably going to trade about 6.5%, so quite significantly lower. But with bonds, obviously bonds are usually unsecured. So is this going to be some form of collateralized bond, collateralized by Bitcoin? It's not clear. The detail is very, very, very sketchy right now. But it's such a cool idea. Yeah, they have an additional 24 volcanoes, which means they could actually issue quite a lot of debt. And there seems to be interest. And they're doing this, I believe, with Bitfinex. And what's interesting is this week you saw a lot of the on-chain data showing that, Bitcoin was being moved off exchanges apart from Bitfinex, which didn't make any sense. Now, in the context of this bond, suddenly it does. So yeah, really interesting development. When it's going to be actually released, what the real details are, I don't know. I'm not quite sure, but it was quite strange. The president of El Salvador announced this on stage, dressed more like a rapper than a president. It's very weird, with a baseball cap on backwards. I'm not quite sure whether he's trying to get hip with the kids or something. I'm not sure.
God. But that's never a good idea, is it? Never.
Yeah, it's slightly weird way of presenting it. But anyway, I think it's a great idea. I absolutely love what they're trying to do, and I think it's really cool. And if they can replicate this with more than one volcano, then yeah, I think there's some really, really positive things happening in this part of the world, and this is going to spread to other countries. So I can see there being a big move in LATAM potentially to embrace and adopt this.
Absolutely. So, and will they be, just so I'm clear on the volcano side of it, will they be using that as an energy source to be mining as well? Is that why it's named after the volcano, or is it just
exactly? Basically, this is essentially going to be using the geothermal energy of the volcano. So again, this is essentially they're going to be pumping water into the volcano, turning it to steam, using a steam turbine to make electricity. So it's basically free resource.
Yeah.
And let's not forget, 90% ish roughly of the cost of mining Bitcoin is electricity. Well, they kind of got theirs for zero. So yeah, I think it's a great idea. Super, super green. I think it's brilliant because then they're going to develop their own nascent industry around the volcano. The only concern I have is I don't know whether I want to be living at the base of an active volcano. That's my small concern about this. Is we built this amazing city. Where is it? Right next to a volcano.
Okay. When did it last erupt?
4 years ago. Oh, okay. So yeah, that my small amount of reticence about this being a great idea. So hey, by all means, have a city near a volcano, but at the base, going around the entire volcano, I don't know.
Well,
call me crazy, but I don't like that idea.
You should set the power plant up there and maybe set the city somewhere further away. I don't know. That's just if that's feasible, but that would make more sense.
That would make a lot more sense, wouldn't it? But yeah, I don't know.
No, that's really interesting. I mean, the more the merrier, the more who adopt this, and it just shows that they're really planning for the long term. So it does give it longevity. So any other news that's caught your eye?
So the only other news I saw that was a little bit troubling was there's been a couple of German politicians, and it's troubling because Germany's been amazing. I've got to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of politicians at the best times. I love the German politicians because they've been doing some awesome stuff. For instance, removing capital gains tax from digital assets. Genius move. Absolute genius move. And I take my hat off to Angela Merkel for doing that. But the comments that I've been seeing recently are a little worrying because they were referring to Bitcoin as being a tulip-esque mania, which is weird because they've embraced digital assets, they've embraced blockchain, and it's now why we're seeing more startups being based in Germany than any other European country. Why? Because basically the tax framework is actually very, very accommodating. So it's odd they're doing this. And I'm not quite sure whether this is maybe tied into the European Union's stance on regulation of digital assets or whether this is something else. But yeah, I was a little surprised by some of those comments. And I'm just thinking, I wonder what is going to happen in Germany. I really hope they don't, because I think what they're doing is brilliant. I love the approach they're taking, and I wish more countries did that.
Yeah, could it be that they're laying the groundwork for their own central bank digital currency at some point, and therefore they've got to rein back from it, maybe?
So yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, that Germany's not going to have their own individual central bank digital currency. It will be the ECB that will issue it, unless of course there's a breakup of the euro, which I guess maybe
course.
I don't know.
Yeah, that would make sense.
So I don't know. I'm not sure. I really don't understand what the rationale is for this. But one of the things that I was really intrigued by, just going back to the India FUD, was a lot of the coverage was around privacy coins. So this ban, again, that they're talking about, seems to be more focused on the assets that are not trackable and traceable. And let's not forget, Bitcoin is the most trackable asset in the world. So if they just ban privacy coins in India, which is not great, but it's better than banning everything, then actually I think that's positive. But again, time will tell. And you're hearing so many conflicting things from different politicians. It's very hard to work out what the truth is.
And when they actually say ban, what do they mean by ban? Because you can't really ban it. It's just you can make it illegal to trade in it, which I suppose would be a big problem. You can stop their exchanges, but when is that what they mean by ban? Effectively,
I don't think they understand what the hell they mean by ban. And this is the funny thing about it is it's kind of like, I mean, I remember when I saw the positive development that essentially the government of Cuba were allowing Cuban nationals to start trading Bitcoin. It's like, awesome, guys, it's 2021, and guess what? Everyone in Cuba has been trading Bitcoin since 2017, even though you said it wasn't allowed, because you can't stop it. So it's a little bit laughable, some of these comments. And this just is symptomatic of having people in positions of political office that have not a clue about how any of this technology works. And they try and frame legislation, and they try and stop what they believe is a very negative thing. But the reality is this is just the future. This is the future rolling forward, and it will roll over them if they're not careful. Yeah,
absolutely. So was that it? Should we go to the chart, see what's going on in the market? Yeah, brilliant. Sure. Okay, that was excellent. So we can ignore the price action here on the S&P and the NASDAQ, because they're going to be much lower by the time they open. Because let me show you what's going on. There's been some headlines, and they're trying to blame this on some COVID variant coming from Africa, which seems like a right load of nonsense to me. What's actually happened is we've had markets that have been trending upwards, equity markets that have been trending higher, and we're having a bit of a correction. Now, where the pressure has been and still is in the Asian market. So if we look at the Hong Kong market, this has been in a downward trend. I virtually wanted to put it in every single week in terms of the weekly document, but there's only so many times you can say this is going down. And not only is this the Hang Seng index, is it going down, it's heading towards its previous low for October and will probably break it. Now, that's never been a particularly good sign. It's just that the Western markets have continued to ignore it, and that's fine. But at some point, you are going to get a reaction. Now, this is the Chinese 50 market, and it's in a downward trend. So it's going to be susceptible to any inverted commas bearish news. Now, the Western markets have been trading upwards in a strong upward trend, and therefore, when you get a lurch lower in the Asian markets, at some point the rubber band snaps back, and you get a big correction. So as far as I'm concerned, this is what's going on. We're going to get probably a correction for the next 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a bit longer, and then those trends will probably kick into the upside. All the technology stocks individually are still looking okay. So they still look like they're probably a bit overbought and need to come back, but this is what is happening right now. So there's been a correction in the crude oil market, which I think is warranted. If you look at this chart, it's not anything that's out of the ordinary. Natural gas, which has been in the headlines, has been making a topping pattern for a while. So I think this is going to come down as well. But, it's had a massive rally. So there's nothing wrong with a bit of a correction here. So I think that's what's behind the equity market lurch lower. And of course, everyone's going to be post hoc giving you a reason in terms of the press. But the main interest, obviously, for us is what's going on in the cryptocurrency market. So if we start off by looking at the US 10-year yields, which is a big driver of everything, that has actually lurched back down, but it's only in this range and the trend is still up. So the dollar, which has been driving a lot of the corrective moves in what I feel has been reacted to in the cryptocurrency markets, has been on a bit of a tear, and it needed to correct itself anyway, but it will potentially extend towards around 97, 98 before it then turns down. So this trend needed to correct a little bit. It's correcting on its short-term trend line. This is a very aggressive trend line. And so it will come back to a more natural angle of trend before it continues up. So a bit of a correction in the dollar, which has been very strong, is warranted. But what does that mean really for the cryptocurrencies? Well, if we look at Bitcoin, we've talked about this move towards 54,000 as a support, and it's been heading there. In the weekly, it looked like Ethereum was going to try and break up, but Bitcoin wasn't going to follow. It looked like it wanted to go down before it's gone up. So as we speak, it is heading towards this 54,000 support, 53,554 level, which we've got here. Now, I would normally wait to see what it does here, see whether it bounces and goes back up. And I've drawn this yellow line here as a kind of buy trigger in case the trend resumes. So you could either do one of two things. You can either buy a breakout of a new high, or you can try and pick it up on a bounce. Now, the question that I'm asking myself here is, what is this sort of correction? Is it a short-term correction, which will hold off here, or is it going to be something larger? And I'm slightly concerned now that it's actually going to break this level. Even though it's massive, I think it might break it. And it's just because of the power of the move in some of the other markets that may be indicating a slightly ahead of the curve as to what this might do. So at the moment, if it does break this 54,000 level and go trade lower into this area, it would mean that this whole price action would be a bit more of a corrective phase. Depending on how you look at it, you will get a much better opportunity to buy in. So it would also mean that we'd have to wait for this big tear up move, which we've kind of been anticipating for a while. And that would just be pushed back slightly into 2022. So I don't think it changes the big picture. It just means that we're going for a bigger correction. before the market goes up. Now, Ethereum, the way that traded was very, very difficult to deal with. And it was almost like Thursday, when I was writing the weekly, it was right on its knife edge. And I was thinking, this does not look as bearish as Bitcoin. And it wasn't. It did actually attempt to break into a new high, or break into a positive trigger, which was this yellow line here. So when we get a correction, they normally come in a 3-wave correction. So I thought, well, this is looking like a 3-wave correction. If it breaks through here and breaks through this resistance, then that will set up a move to the all-time high, which would be a really positive thing. And it was slightly less aggressive in its pullback. But this is very unusual. You don't normally see a market break up like this and then completely collapse like 6-7% in one go. So it's not impossible, because obviously nothing's impossible when it comes to the markets. But what does this mean? Does this mean that this is going to be another consolidation before it goes up? It kind of tips the balance more towards the downside, unfortunately. So I think we're going to see trade down towards these sorts of levels, around 3,600, before the trend goes back up again. So I'd be wary that we're going to see a bigger correction here. And again, ultimately better levels to buy. So this is the Bitcoin Ethereum spread that I've been mentioning, how it's edging towards these highs. And when it breaks this, it's really going to fly. So I'm always monitoring it when it gets close to it. But that was why I was thinking, well, Ethereum should go up. It could even go into an upward trend, even if Bitcoin's sort of a bit more corrective. But it seems like we're in a bigger correction for everything. Now, I'm going to drop to DOT, because this, I think, for me, is going to be a really interesting market to follow as a leader for some of the other markets. I was going to talk about this today as being a head and shoulders pattern, and it correcting aggressively to the downside, but it's already done it. So this has made a head and shoulders pattern, and that is really a sell signal. So it's the first time I've seen a big sell signal in any of the markets. Some have underperformed, that's fine. Some have outperformed, which is great. But this is actually a sell signal. So this implies a move back down towards the 30 level, and perhaps even 27 as a correction. And I think this is a leading indicator for everything else. So I'm getting more prepared for a longer term pullback and some buy levels coming in. Same with Solana. So Solana was doing really well. Then it had its correction. That corrective phase bounced off a really nice support line last week. So it's great, off to the races again. It failed at a resistance line, and then it's come and broken this support point. So I think this is going to have a bigger correction, because this now looks like a head and shoulders pattern. So watch out for a bigger correction in Solana. Again, it means that longer term there'll be some better buy levels coming in. And it doesn't necessarily mean that some of the other altcoins will perform badly, because there are some that are going to continue to do really well. It's just that you're going to have to find them and look at their relative technical picture. But the majors seem to be in a corrective phase, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that happen for a good few weeks before it bases out and things start to turn back up again. Cardano was one that was just not performing, and it's still not performing. It's still retracing. So I want to see this be one of the first ones that turns back up. So I think when this becomes more bullish, it will give us a leading indicator as to how big the correction will be in the other markets. So once this turns up, which I really feel it will do at some point, we'll get an early steer for the majors, because things do move in rotation. And there has been quite a lot of hype around Solana. It's one of the more exciting technologies. And I just think it broadly needs to pull back. Now, some of the ones that have gone a bit quiet, that's actually a really good time to be getting more excited about them. So, Matic is actually trading much better than quite a lot of the other markets. It's holding its consolidation. It's still within this triangle. So that could easily break out to the upside and just completely buck the trend. So if there's a story out there as to what's pushing equity markets down, I don't think it's COVID. I think it's another shoe's got to drop in the Chinese market, and that's what's leading this correction. Now, to lurch into a risk-off phase, which seems to be what's happening, the cryptocurrencies can fall into that category. So a corrective phase is not unwarranted, and we have been a little bit more cautious about this happening in the last few weeks. But ultimately, we've got to look for support levels to hold, and I'd be very pleased if Bitcoin does hold the 54,000 levels going into the next two. If it holds it for 2 weeks, then I think it'll be fine. But if it's going to go relatively quickly, because we're on these levels now and the market is moving. And I have to say, given the chart pattern in DOT, I think there's more chance that we're going to test the downside before we go back up again. So what do you think, Manu?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think we kind of discussed this over the last couple of weeks that we had a period where you were seeing this this move in most other asset classes that was not being mirrored in crypto, and suddenly it's become way more correlated. So absolutely, equities look like the correction will be a little bit deeper. Again, I don't think it's going to be huge. I really don't think it's going to be I was at some point early this year hoping for a move down back to 20K, so I could load up on Bitcoin. Sadly, I don't think that's going to happen again. But yeah, absolutely. Could this basically, if it smashes through 54, could it get down to 40K? Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
So it just really depends on how we trade over the next couple of weeks. And I was looking forward for a Santa rally. I don't think we're going to see that though. So I agree. I think realistically we're going to consolidate, if not trend lower, and then probably have the big parabolic move in Q1 next year.
Very interesting. Brilliant stuff, Manu. Thank you so much. And
sure.
What do you think, guys? If you think that the market is going to go lower, then put something in the comments. Let us know. If there's a particular coin that you would like us to analyze, or particular market, just stick that in the comments and we'll look at it on the show next week. So thank you for watching, and we'll catch you next time.